My name is Shivani.
And I'm Miranda, and this is episode 30 of Far From Normal.
Yay! Got it right this time. I still forget, but I have everything together now, so it's okay. Today we were gonna talk about feminism. Would you like to introduce the topic?
Okay, so I am in this group called Leading Women of Tomorrow. Wow, good words, Miranda. Leading Women of Tomorrow. And last semester we had an organization from Indianapolis, which is called Black Women in Charge, which also I've posted on the Instagram a few times, so you can check them out when we're done. But this organization came in and talked to us about this podcast, this separate podcast that NPR did, which was called Hood Feminism. It talked about the concept that white feminists do not necessarily support, or at least don't fight for, minority feminists.
Got it. No, it makes a lot of sense, because I remember when feminism started to become more prominent in the media. It started out as the simple definition, like equality for women. But then as time went on, it's definitely changed and it's evolved, and different subcategories of feminism started to become more of a thing. And it's just hard to find a balance where we can agree on the definition of feminism, because I feel like now it's more just subjective from person to person, and based on different factors that we wouldn't normally think about, race and economic, social conditions, and that makes a lot of sense how it would be separated into white feminism and hood feminism. And you could draw parallels to the Black Lives Matter movement, and everything is connected, and it's just really crazy to see that. But,
So, question for you. With this, problem I've proposed of white feminists striving for their own goals and minority feminists striving for their own goals, do you think one is more important?
No.
Okay.
No, definitely not. I mean, they're all striving for equality in the same, in their own sense, but it's just, I think it's because it's so divided, one becomes more important than the other unintentionally, because they're not able to see the other side of the group's story. Because obviously if you don't identify as a person of color, you're not really going to understand what the experience of a person of color, what their experience would be. So it'd be really hard to do that. I mean, obviously you can talk to them, you can try to educate yourself on their history and stuff like that, but there are some things that you just really can't understand until you experience it. And what was that? But yeah, for sure, I definitely don't think there's one that's more important than the other. I think it's just, it ends up looking like that in the media, but that's not necessarily what the intention of feminism is. It's equality for all women. But
in you said something about the media, and I thought that was interesting. Which type of feminism do you think the media portrays more?
It's a good question. I feel like I'm not necessarily qualified to answer this really, because we were talking about this earlier, but I never really identified myself as a feminist. I never thought about it. I never put much thought into it. I thought, my thought process was that because I'm a woman, it's implied that I want equality for women, and I'm going to be doing things that, support women, and that's just how it is. It's just built into me. I'm never gonna not be supporting women. But I guess, I mean, depending on the person, they probably could, like the traditionalist way. But yeah, I feel like I'm not really qualified to answer that question, because I never really researched it or really paid attention to that media types. But I don't know, based on the stuff that you've told me, white feminism is definitely more prominent than feminism within different communities, other communities.
I feel like low key, when we talked about it in our organization, it seemed like white feminists hijacked the movement and are I don't know, I guess I don't think it's intentional, not helping other people. I think it's just self-concerned and trying to promote yourself reaching equality and not women as a whole, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, I could see like how they could end up being a little more self-centered about it because like they only know what they know and they don't really know what other people are
Yeah.
experiencing. So like they I don't know how you would like fix that unless you had like someone, a person of color, a person like a woman of color, like outright like telling them like, you know, there are
Calling it
other
out.
problems. Yeah, like
Mhm.
calling them out and just being like, hey, like, you know, we need to fix this first before we can move to this next step.
Yeah.
And then maybe they're like 3 steps ahead of like where, you know, a certain category of women are in. And yeah, that's like, yeah. It's a valid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Um,
That's just, it's kind of, well, yeah. Similarly, and we can go back to the colored feminists specifically, but I feel like this is like a prominent issue that a lot of people talk about. Like feminists, liberal feminists argue that like you can't be a feminist if you don't support gay rights, if you don't support Black American rights, if you don't support yada yada. Would you agree with that concept?
I mean, I don't know. That's a good question because like just because you're a feminist, that doesn't automatically mean that like a person
Mm-hmm.
is gonna support everything else because
Right.
like to them that might just be a completely separate like category.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But like I guess it would make sense if you thought about it as like just people who are like a certain group of people being marginalized. So then like if you're feminist, then you would just want to support everyone else who's being
Okay.
marginalized.
Yeah.
But like I'm not sure if everyone thinks like that. Cause like I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of different factors you have to think about,
Yeah.
especially like from person to person, how they were raised. Maybe like I mean, I understand that like if you would identify as feminist, it makes sense to be like, you know, support everyone else, but I don't know if everyone else thinks like that. So what
Cool.
about you? What do you think?
Um, I definitely, I'm along the same lines of you. I think you should support other marginalized groups, unless it like completely contradicts your values. Like, you know, if you're a woman, you should support lesbian women because like I feel like that's a feminist thing, like supporting all women, women supporting women. There's also the issue of like women, like super Christian women supporting abortion, which is typically a feminist topic, which gets into a whole lot of, it's a different can of worms. But
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, as you were talking, I was thinking about like it also like depends on like the demographic, like not like the demographic, but like where like which country you're in and like
Oh yeah.
the culture differences. Because like I think about like India because like that's the closest thing to me, but like
Right.
yeah, it's a very largely patriarchal society. So like and like women are you know faced with a lot of like oppression and just not having as many rights as men do just because it's like you know kind of like built into their culture kind of like that.
Right.
And there's a huge movement happening now and it has been for like a little while now, and I feel like they're just so busy trying to gain equality for women that they might not have time to think about like other topics like you know like LGBT. I could be wrong,
Okay.
but like I don't know, I feel like that is just like its own category and
Right.
to like I don't know if that can be like lumped into like LGBTQ plus
That's fair.
categories because still like in Indian culture, LGBTQ is definitely not something that's discussed as often as like you know women rights because that's something they've been trying to gain for
Yeah.
years and years and years, and it's still happening now. It's nowhere near where America is.
Yeah.
But that's why I would say it's different. But like
That's
I don't know.
fair. Like if you're spending all your time fighting for one thing, you can't fight for everything. So
Hmm,
that makes
that's
sense.
yeah. I don't know. I could be wrong. I just like I don't. I've only lived in like India for 4 years,
Yeah.
so like, and I know stuff from my parents, but like in our culture, but like I definitely consider myself more American than I am Indian because definitely don't practice anything within my cultures much. But yeah.
The topic of India actually sparked a thought in my head. There's a lot of like controversy within the feminist community of like Eastern women roles, I would say. Because of religion, like a lot of women are expected to like hide their faces or do different things of that nature. And a lot of people argue that like it's anti-feminist to support those things. But on the other hand, some of those women actually want to because it's their religion. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I feel like people try to conflate two different like things. They're trying to like put like religion and like feminism and like into different things. And I feel like in some sense, feminism is like subjective from like person to person, because like you exercising your rights as a woman and your freedom as a woman could look different from someone else who's exercising their rights as a woman. And like we were I think one of like the topic things that we have to talk about was like whether you think someone who wants to be a stay-at-home mom is like against feminism. And like I definitely don't think that's against feminism. That's a woman who wants to do what, wants to be a stay-at-home mom. I mean, that shouldn't be against feminism. I mean, if we're really talking about equality, that should include like free will and people being able to do what they want. And if you say that, I don't know, a woman is not allowed to be a stay-at-home mom because that, if you're saying that like that's not feminist, then that's kind of defeating the point of feminism, I would think.
Because it puts different labels on women again.
Right. Yeah. And like, yeah, it's just more oppression and like more of like not letting them do what they want and against freedom entirely. Like, well, no. But yeah, I don't know. What about you? What do you think?
Pretty much along the same lines. Like, women should be allowed to, obviously, legal things. Like anything that brings in equality. And the same goes for like men or non-binary or, like you don't have to fit any labels. Do whatever, like let people do what they want.
For sure. Yeah.
Off of that, is there anything that you think a woman can believe in that would like any line in the sand? Like if a woman believes in something, they can't be a feminist.
That's a good question, and I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Okay.
Because I think it just kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, in the sense that like feminism is like subjective.
Yeah.
And as long as they're not interfering with anyone else's freedom to do what they want as a woman, then they can be a feminist. But like if you're going out of your way to tell someone that what they're doing isn't right, or stopping someone, or like doing like participating in protests to like stop women for being, I don't know, believing in a certain opinion. I don't know. I would even go so far as to say that like if you're pro-life and you're bashing another woman for believing in that, I think that still goes against feminism in a way.
Interesting. Cool.
Because I mean, as long as like the pro-life person isn't doing anything else to like bash other pro-choice people, as long as they're like minding their own business and doing whatever they want
without attacking pro-choice.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think if they like stay in their lane and do whatever they need to do and not hurt anyone else, I think it's fine. Yeah. I think it's fine. I think it just kind of goes back to like the umbrella term of like freedom, and like just letting people do what they want and not interfering and not causing any harm. Yeah.
I want to go more to the abortion thing. I know we've gone a little off track, but because like pro-life people think that like it's murder, right?
Right.
So like it's hard to like be pro-life without like fighting against pro-choice with people.
That's true. Maybe that was a really bad example. No, but like hypothetically,
like question: is it anti-feminist to like be pro-life? Like,
okay, what are your thoughts? Maybe I can like gather myself together.
I really don't know. I know a lot of people who say that it's anti-feminist to be pro-life. Like a lot, but also I don't know. It's really hard because I know a lot of feminists I know a lot of feminists who are pro-life because, growing up Catholic. I almost think it's if you are pro-life, it's like a flaw in your feminism. Um,
A
which is
flaw.
super weird.
Okay.
Like, it's like the concept. I'm gonna jump way weird because I'm trying to make it metaphorical.
Okay.
Like human beings can be good people, but have a ton of flaws, like sins and stuff. But you can still go to heaven. So like, you can still be a feminist and have like a flaw of being pro-life, I guess. Which is, I don't know. I don't like the way I'm phrasing it because it sounds like I don't support people, but like it's also hard to be pro-life and not harsh on other women. So it's like, I don't know, it's hard because like feminists should support women. So it has to be a flaw to be argumentatively pro-life, I guess. Like you can be pro-life with yourself, but also because they think it's murder, typically pro-life people are against women. Yeah. Anyway, I went in circles.
I'm okay. I'm gonna like jump a little back a little.
Okay, sorry.
What am I trying to say? Anyway, no, didn't you identify as pro-life at some point though?
I'm pro-life internally, but pro-choice with government.
Could you
But
explain that a
also,
little bit?
like I think I would encourage my friends, but I wouldn't force it. Like I think people should choose not to abort a baby, but I also don't think it's the government's decision, it's the woman's decision.
So like how you just explained that, I think you could say that like based like you could be pro-life and still support women, you know?
Yeah, but I think the pro-life versus pro-choice argument, we're totally off track. Pro-life versus pro-choice argument is whether it should be legal, not necessarily.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I think it just depends on how you define pro-life and pro-choice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if we're talking about like government policy and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and that would make a difference. But yeah, I would definitely agree that the option should be there. So like that if you were fighting against, if a woman who identified as pro-life was fighting against abortion being an option, then I would think that's against feminism because it's
Right.
against it's
Women
against
controlling their own bodies.
yeah, it's against like their freedom to do what like it's yeah. Yeah, I would that's I think I would
It's a
explain it
hard
like
one.
that. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Huh.
Speaking of men making decisions for women, if you are a feminist, should you be supporting women in politics? Which is kind of similar to our topic from last week about like people saying like Black Lives Matter in order to get votes. Like, should you vote for a woman just because they're a woman?
See, this is something I've been like going back and forth with in my mind because sometimes I feel like other women vote for women in politics because they are women and not necessarily for their qualifications. But then again, I'm not necessarily qualified to answer this either because I didn't do enough research. I did not do enough research on like the people who were running and like seeing what their qualifications were. So I can't say for sure if that's what actually happened. But based on like what I've seen in like social media, people like tend to hype up the fact that a woman is in politics, but they don't talk about their qualifications as much, which I am not against at all. I'm for women, obviously, and I want them. I mean, we need more women in politics and in the government, and that is definitely something we need. But like, I feel like sometimes people don't necessarily consider the qualifications as much as they do the fact, as much as they focus on like diversity. And do you think that? I mean, going off of that, do you think there are any consequences that could come from that, or do you think it's like, we're heading in a good direction?
Consequences from more women in power?
No, consequences in terms of like voting people in not because of their qualification, but because of like their color, or like how
I definitely think I'm gonna go back to like what Donovan said. I think a lot of people, specifically like the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party, like when they put women on the ballot, it's not to promote feminism, but it's because to get voters. So I think we do run into the issue of when that woman gets whatever position she was running for, she either does not fight for women's issues, or she doesn't have like the option to fight for women's issues because she's just like a Marinette. Is that what they're called? Marionette?
Yeah. Or yeah. I think so.
Which is honestly kind of what I'm worried about, because everyone's like in love with Kamala Harris, and I think she's cool and like all that stuff. But I'm kind of worried that she's gonna be used as a puppet to get women to vote for. Well, I mean, obviously Biden was voted in, but she's gonna be used as a puppet for women appreciation, not necessarily
like what she's doing,
being allowed to do what she wants to do.
Yeah. No, it's like a hard thing to talk about and to like not really talk about, but just to like understand, because I think there would be a lot of research that's involved in that to just to like figure out like who they are as a person and like what they've done and like how like what their qualifications are. But then like I also think about like the fact that like because the people in politics tend to be like white, like maybe we just aren't looking hard enough for people who are qualified. So like within different communities there are people who have had that experience, but we just don't see them because maybe there is some sort of flaw in the system. So that could also be a huge thing.
That kind of sparked a question. Again, you're so good at that. But like we talked about at some point, I think, about how women are less likely to run than men. Do you think minority women are less likely to run than white women? Totally like something you probably wouldn't know off the top of your head, but just curiosity.
I think we would have to talk about, I think you'd have to go back to like how they were brought up and like are they immigrants, are like they from a different country, are they just moving, like are we just talking about like the US, or are we just talking about like like all over the world? Because I think that would make a huge difference, because based on like the culture and like like the social dynamics, maybe like the women in that specific country want to be stay-at-home moms and like they see themselves in that sense, but I don't know if that's something that like stops them, because if it's something they really wanted to do, I think we would maybe hear more about that, especially now with like social media.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I don't know. I mean, because like at least all the, people I know who are passionate about politics and who are people of color, like if they have an opinion, they are not afraid to go out and tell people about it. If they really think it matters.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think there's anything stopping them. It's just like a matter of like what they value and like their experiences as like a person of color.
Interesting.
But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't ask you the same question, but I don't know if you have.
I do not know.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna go backwards because I don't have another follow-up question.
Okay.
Going back to the voting for women, like, I'm gonna go backwards to like Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
So a lot of feminists did not necessarily recognize her as being all that feministic. I don't know. Like what we're talking about, like a woman who's on the ballot just to get votes, but isn't actually going to do anything. So, like with that concept, if she had won, would it have been a good thing because we finally had a woman as president, or would it have been like, would that not have made a difference, I guess? Again, super opinion-based question. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing it, feel free.
No, I think this is an interesting question. And I think it's interesting that you asked that, because like we had a Black President Obama. Did that really change anything? Like with the Black Lives Matter movement, did it make any progress? So I really don't think like Hillary Clinton would have made much of a difference.
Okay.
Really. I mean, unless she really, really focused on like women's rights and like made that her priority.
Okay.
Does that make
That's
any
fair.
sense?
That is fair. Because like we can say that we finally had a woman president, but in the end, like all that is a like symbolic thing. Like, yes, we had a woman president, but if it didn't make a difference, so what? That's fair.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
I like that answer. That was a really good answer. I'm glad I asked you. I have to answer first because I would had no idea.
Thanks. It's so weird because I like read a comment about it on YouTube and I was like, that's interesting to think about. So yeah, weird. Yeah. It's really interesting. I think, did we talk about this? Like how like there's like so many like parallels to like different like marginalized groups, like, you know, like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that.
We did talk about a little bit about LGBTQ, but that's about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about. Like, I don't know. It's just like it makes you wonder like how do you go about solving these issues? Like you could talk about like history, but then you would have to like modernize it in a sense because you would have to think about like all the different types of groups that you're helping.
Okay.
So like where would you start?
Are you talking about like in BLM, like how like it's very, I don't know, like what's a parallel you're thinking of? Like men in BLM kind of?
I was just talking about feminism in general, but what were you thinking?
Well, you said your parallels. I was hoping I could get you to explain that.
Right. So like in BLM we were talking about this in the last episode where we were seeing how like people that were white were more like profiting off of like the BLM movement by like, you know, like supporting the cause, but they weren't necessarily like pushing the movement forward. They were just like, you know, developing products to say like I'm an ally and, you know, like I support Black Lives Matter. But then we were talking about like, does that actually like hurt the Black community in a sense?
Okay, so like that's related to the white feminism one because sometimes white people do things within the feminist community that maybe pull them forward but push back minorities. Okay.
Right. Do you think it's necessary, like at least like now, do you think it'd be necessary to have those like a different group for each people who, I mean not each people, each community, like we say we have like a Black woman feminist Black feminism, so like they go about feminism in a different way versus like white feminism. Do you think there should be a difference between how they go about that?
I'm a obviously white feminist, but I mean I try to focus on other issues obviously, but I am a white person and I'm a feminist. Distinguishing. But I think there's more power in the numbers. I think women should try to educate other women and make it like their responsibility, I guess. Like minority women and white women should both fight for minority issues and I guess white issues kind of, but not to the, you know, part where the white people are overbearing on the issue, but like, you know, fighting for all issues. Did that answer it all? I feel like I had something else to say, but I lost it.
You're good. No, that answered it. Yeah, you basically saying that we work together. We work better together.
Yes, and also, that's what I was gonna say. White privilege. White privilege, right? If a white woman is helping fight for minority right, guess what? The minority right will get passed faster. Just like how like white people stood in front of Black people during the BLM movement in like April. I couldn't remember the month after March. Like stood in front of them when they were getting attacked by the police, and the police were less brutal to the white people, and so therefore the Black people were able to get their marches done. In a similar way, white people can help push things forward for the minority communities using their white privilege and make it so that minority communities get what they want and feminism moves forward.
So you think
but
there's
also don't play the white hero complex because that's gross.
Right. That's an interesting take on it because I don't think I've ever heard about like white privilege talked about in a way that was helping like oppressed communities. Like, wow. Yeah.
I've
Do you
seen it
think?
on Instagram. That's where I got the idea. I mean, like, I don't know if a Black individual would agree with me, and not be like, maybe I am saying things that make it sound like the white savior complex,
Yeah.
which isn't the intention. But I also think, like, if there is privilege, there's going to, well, right now at least, there's going to be privilege no matter what. So we should use it at least to help the other communities and to, I guess, get rid of privilege.
Hmm.
What are your
Yeah.
thoughts? Because you're not white, so maybe you can attack what I'm saying or support it, or I don't know.
I don't know. I still feel like I'm not the right person to ask because
Yeah.
I definitely I don't want to say I don't care. It's like I do care. It's just like I never found myself in situations to care to that extent.
Okay.
So like I've never had to like find myself being protected by someone who was white or like, you know, like that like the color you were never like really occurred to me. It was just like we're human beings helping each
Okay.
other out, you know?
Yeah.
But then like that would probably my answer would probably vary a lot from like someone who really involves themselves in like social justice and like politics and stuff like that. Because I could see how a person of color could take offense to like a white person I guess using their white privilege to move a cause forward because like in their head that might be like they're taking away my agency, like as in like my power to do something about it. Like, am I not good enough to like fix my own problems? Am I inferior like to you? Like, do you have more power than me to like fix these problems? Like, are we still like, is the problem still there? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like,
no. Yeah. Definitely.
I could see how someone could interpret it like that, but then that's also like something that was just like I think it varies from person to person, like based on their experiences and like what they believe and value. And I think that's just why it's so hard for us to come to a conclusion to any of this, just because we all have different experiences and values. But,
it would also lead to like maybe it would lead to like whitewashing the movement, kind of like we talked about last week. Like if white people use their white privilege, would the movement still be the same? I do not know the answer to that.
That's a good way to end this episode because we're basically out of time, but that is great. Yeah, a great thing to think about. And I don't know if we'll ever come to an answer anytime soon, but
I really liked that. I liked questioning things. Like it was cool because like I was questioning my own beliefs, like or like also I was questioning my like privilege and stuff, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. I mean, okay, wait, I'm gonna add one more thing. But basically, like I've like thought about like my privilege as well because like I'm a person of color, but I'm not Black. And you know, in America, there's like, it's the majority of like the problems that are happening are between like whites and Blacks. And in a sense, I'm like an Asian and I have privilege too because the problems that we have are very different. And like it's just I have privilege too.
But you're still discriminated against.
Not as severely as Blacks, but yes, there is discrimination. So like it's kind of hard. I mean, there's a lot of Asians and like people who don't identify as Black, who are also a person of color. They have their separate set of discrimination and stereotypes and problems. But like, I don't know, some people there's varying opinions about this. But I think this is almost like an entirely different topic. Like I would need like someone else to help me on this. But like, yes, that's a good question. Maybe that could be a future episode.
Okay.
Maybe.
Write it down.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yeah. So, do you have any closing thoughts? Closing witty comments or whatever?
Not really. I feel like the episodes we're doing right now are too deep for me to make like a pun out of it. So I'm just gonna leave it off.
Got it. Got you. I don't have anything either. So thank you guys for listening.
Yes. Feel free to email us at off the top of your head because I don't.
Okay. So for everyone who's listening, if you guys have any questions, comments, feedback, you can email us at farfromnormalpodcast2020@gmail.com. We have an Instagram at farfromnormalpodcast. There's also a Google form on the Instagram page, and you can basically just fill it out and write anything that's on your mind, really, and we'll answer it. We'll make a discussion out of it. We want to hear you, so definitely don't be afraid to do that. And I think I've gotten everything.
Yeah,
basically, we have a link tree. We'll probably add all the links in the description as well, so it'll be easier for you to find them. But thank you for listening.
Follow us on YouTube.
And hit that notification
or
bell.
subscribe.
Subscribe.
My dad. Love you guys.
We love you. Bye.